I'm Kelsey. This is my channel, The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I am wearing one of my fancy booktube hats, and today I am doing this week's BooktubeSFF Babbles video. In case you're unaware, the BooktubeSFF Babbles are a series of video prompts in conjunction with the BooktubeSFF Awards. Anyone can join in and make a video or other posts surrounding these prompts. I will link the Goodreads group for the BooktubeSFF Awards down below so you can find future prompts and join in. There are also read-alongs going on right now for the BooktubeSFF Award nominees, so that is all there if you want to find it. This week's prompt is SFF in other media, and I saw this prompt as an opportunity, an invitation to do a video that I felt for a long time like I really should do but wasn't really motivated to make. Or perhaps I was intimidated a bit by the prospect of making it, and that is a video about theater, about plays. So specifically, my Babbles video for this week is going to be about fantasy on stage. Now, part of the reason I've been nervous to make this video is that I've been going through a really sort of contentious relationship with my love of theater for the past couple years or so. There are many reasons for this, but one of them, and the one that I'd like to mention in this particular context, is that the more and more I've been finding stories in books in my reading that I really, really love, the less and less I've felt like the stories I've been seeing on stage hold up well in comparison. Because theater is a transient art form, and because producing it is hard, and because it is local, you can only see a piece of theater if you are physically in the city where it's playing. There is just less variety when it comes to a night at the theater than there is when it comes to picking out a book. And so it's become very easy for me to get dissatisfied with whatever's on offer any particular season, even in a city like New York where there's a frickin' lot of theater. And frankly, I haven't seen much of any theater lately that has held up to the sorts of standards that I hold books up to. And some of my dissatisfaction, I think, has come from the fact that over the last couple years or so, I have become much more aware of my own genre preferences. You know, I walk into a theater, I see another living room set on the stage, I say, oh no, not again, another dysfunctional family in a living room. I look at the price of my ticket and think wistfully about how many used books I could have bought for that money. And that while it totally exists, it is hard to find really good SFF in theater, especially since I don't think the theater world thinks of genre in that way. I don't think a lot of theater people would think of certain plays as being fantasy or science fiction, even if they are. And the word contemporary in theater, for example, means something totally different than it does in the book world. In the book world, the word contemporary has to do with the setting of a play. In the theater world, the word contemporary literally just has to do with when it is written. There are contemporary plays and there are classical plays. There's also a slightly different attitude of categorizing theater for different age groups. There is normal theater, and then there is theater for young audiences, which is children's theater, and that's sometimes abbreviated as TYA. Not YA as in young adult. There's no young adult genre in theater. But I think talking about children's theater is a really important place for me to start here, because the more I think about it, the more I realize that my love of fantasy and my love of theater really, if I look back to those early years of my life, started in the same place. And that is with children's theater. Good quality, high quality fantasy productions that I saw as a small child. I grew up in the Seattle area, so the theater company where I fell in love with the stage was Seattle Children's Theater. My parents started taking me to see productions there when I was about 3 years old, and of course I don't have clear memories of most of those shows that I saw. And not all of those shows were fantasy, but a lot of them were. I know I saw shows as a kid that were fairy tale or folklore adaptations, and I know I saw shows as a kid that were adaptations of children's fantasy books. I was, of course, also a voracious reader as a child from a very young age, but my earliest childhood memories of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, say, I know I read that book as a kid, but my strongest memories of that story from my childhood are of a stage adaptation I saw. I don't know how many of you guys guys are familiar with the children's book Bunnicula and its sequels. It's about a vampire bunny that sucks vegetables dry. But I didn't start reading the book. I saw a stage production of Bunnicula as a child that changed my life forever. It made me want to be an actor when I grew up. I was in a class at Seattle Children's Theatre where I got to go on the stage and sit on the set, and the puppeteer brought the big Bunnicula puppet into class, and it changed my life. But this video is not supposed to be my life story. This video is supposed to be a list of recommendations, and I do have a stack of 5 plays here. These are all plays that I have physical copies of in book form. I can link them for you on Goodreads. You can check them out from your library and read them like a book. But they are here not because they have changed my life in print form, but because they have changed my life in production. And I think it's a bit of an aha moment for me to realize how some of the most important theater-going experiences, and in some cases theater-performing experiences for me, have been connected to fantasy. And to look at this list of plays that have meant a lot to me and to think, you know, no one on Booktube would be surprised that I like any of these plays. These are all so consistent with the books that I like. It's insane. I'm going to add that this BooktubeSFF Babbles topic was also a crossover topic for Top 5 Wednesday yesterday. I missed and didn't get this done by yesterday, but these are 5 books, so it is sort of a belated Top 5 Wednesday. So the first play I have on my list here is one of those productions that I saw as a very small kid, and that is a play called Still Life with Iris by Stephen Dietz. It was commissioned by Seattle Children's Theatre. It was originally performed there in 1997, and I would have seen that original production in my wee childhood, and that there is a production photo from the production that I know I saw as a kid, even though I was so young I don't really remember seeing it. I later performed in a student production of this play in middle school, so I was re-familiarized with it at that point in my life. Stephen Dietz is a well-known playwright who is not known for writing things like this. This is well out of his established wheelhouse to have written a fantasy show for kids. But this play is basically the stage equivalent of all of that whimsical middle grade fantasy that I can never get enough of. It's about a girl named Iris who's from a land called Nocturno, where the people there make the things that appear in the regular world by day. And in Nocturno, people's memories are sewn onto their coats. Iris is stolen away by these outrageous comedic villains, the Great Goods, who have decided they want to have one of the best of everything. And they decide that she is going to be their daughter because they've decided that she is the best little girl, and they take away her past coat so that she doesn't remember where she came from. And this is the charming, whimsical tale of how she finds her past again and makes it back home along with a couple of friends she meets along the way. The next 2 plays I have here are kind of a pair, and they are the obvious ones. The obvious ones are obviously Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream and The Tempest. I am a huge fan of Shakespeare's comedies. I enjoy them more than the tragedies. I know that's a controversial opinion, but if you know me, you will understand that this is also very me of me. It all fits together. It turns out I'm the same person as a theater nerd and a bookworm. Who knew? But these were also very formative plays for me in my young life. I fell madly in love with A Midsummer Night's Dream in like 3rd grade. I think that was when I first read the play, and yes, I do think I read the entire Shakespeare play in 3rd grade. I don't know how much of it I really understood at the time. I knew a summary of the plot going into it, which was probably like the only way I knew what was going on. So this would have been my introduction to the idea, the entire concept of fae fantasy. And I was obsessed with this play for like most of my young life. I do not want to confess how many student productions of this I was in throughout my childhood. I don't want to confess how many different characters in this play I played in those variant student productions, and yet I have never played played Helena. I desperately need someone to cast me as Helena because that is the obvious role for me in this play, but I digress. At various points in my life, I have known the majority of the text of this play by heart. It's just one of those things that, like, made me. It introduced me to fairies who were morally gray, who were tricksters, who messed with human lives, and a sense of otherworldly mystery where you might stumble into the woods and come back changed. And yeah, as an adult, there are things that I see in this play that I don't love so much as I did when I was a kid. But on the other hand, there are also things that I understand a whole lot better and find way more interesting, especially the fantasy elements as I've grown more and more interested in the history of the folklore that it draws from. This is also a play that invites broad physical comedy, and that's one of those things that in a stage production, it's like, I love it, go big or go home. A much more subtle play is The Tempest. This is one of Shakespeare's late plays. It's one of the late romances. It's one of his shortest plays. It has much more subtle and complex themes. Like some of the other late romances, it has themes of forgiveness and redemption that I particularly appreciate. One of the most common modern scholarly angles on the play is to look at how it deals with ideas of colonialism from Shakespeare's time, both with regards to Prospero's relationship with the magical creatures who serve him on this island, and also the fact that characters from all of the different subplots at some point or another talk about how they would rule this island that they've landed upon if it were theirs to govern. I will admit, when I was a teenager, that was not so much what I liked about this play. I was in it for the angsty romance. As an adult, I find that romance far less satisfying than I did as a teenager, and also I am frustrated to no end that Miranda is the only female character in this play. I was also in a student production of this, like the summer between middle school and high school. I played Trinculo because. The next play I have here is one that I saw a production of when I was in high school, and that is Eurydice by Sarah Ruhl. This is a retelling of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth. It is weird and whimsical. It is, on the page, it is open to interpretation. There are a lot of stage directions that are really elegantly written that leave room for directors to interpret them however they want, but it also makes it just a really interesting play to read on the page if you want to do that. There are a mix of shorter scenes and longer scenes, like shorter scenes like this. Some of them are more stage direction than text. It's an elegant and sparse play, and it's a little weird, and I like it. As the title suggests, this play follows Eurydice as she dies and goes into the underworld, and of course Orpheus eventually comes and tries to get her back. The notes in the beginning suggest that Eurydice and Orpheus should be played as though they are a little too young and a little too in love. Orpheus is of course a musician, and that is his life. And in this play, Eurydice is a bookworm, which I love about it. She loves words and ideas, and when she goes to the underworld, she loses her memories, and she forgets what books are, and she forgets how to read. She meets her father there, who takes care of her and helps her build her memories back. And so this deals with both that father-daughter relationship and also a meditation on her relationship with Orpheus, who sees the world differently than she does. You see the sort of gulf between them. There's a chorus of stones who are three characters who provide narration and commentary. If I recall correctly, Hades rides a tricycle. It's all very strange and surreal, but it's also incredibly beautiful. An example of a scene that's written with a lot of stage directions that I totally love is this scene where Orpheus has sent her a copy of the collected works of Shakespeare to her in the underworld, and Eurydice holds the collected works of Shakespeare. What is this? She opens it. She doesn't understand it. She throws the book on the ground. What are you? She's wary of it, as though it might bite her. She tries to understand the book. She tries to make the book do something. What do you do? What do you do? Say something! I hate you! She stands on the book, trying to read it. Damn you! She throws the book. She lies down in the string room. Drops of water. Time passes. The father picks up the book. He brushes it off. In the string room, the father teaches Eurydice how to read. She looks over her shoulder as he reads aloud from King Lear. And a scene like that can be staged with as much time and silence as it needs to have. By the way, this is another dream role for me. I do an audition monologue from this play that I absolutely love. If you are casting a production of either this or Midsummer and you need a Eurydice or a Helena, like, I am free, will travel. In case you can't tell, I've sort of arranged these plays in the order in my life that I was first introduced to them. So the last one is a show that was on Broadway when I was in college, and that is Peter and the Starcatcher. The stage adaptation is by Rick Elice. It is an adaptation of the middle grade novel. The play is better than the book. The book is a kid's book. The play is not children's theater. It is wild and whimsical and magical and fantastical, and it is meant for grown-ups. This is, of course, a Peter Pan prequel that tells us how Peter got to Neverland in the first place. The season that this was on Broadway, I saw it twice, and my love for that original production, got me through a really, really rough period in my college life. This was a show with wild physical comedy. It was basically like everything I have ever loved about going to the theater. This, because it's huge, is the annotated script of the play. It has, production photos and little notes from some of the creative team. And I can show you some big full spread production shots. This was just such a fun, wild ride of a show. It's complete ensemble theater, and it relies on DIY stage magic. I don't know how I've gotten this far in a video about fantasy in theater without talking about magic on stage. There are, of course, many ways you can do magic on stage, and some of them are more transparent than others. I have always been of the belief that you don't need to be deceived by the illusion to believe in it, and that is the sort of magic that this play relies on. At least the way it was staged on Broadway, that was definitely the case. There's a Terry Pratchett quote from the We Free Men that I have liked on Goodreads and pinned to my Goodreads profile, in part because it reminds me of this. And that's, it doesn't stop being magic just because you know how it works. There's a scene in this play where you see a character fly, and it's not done with a fancy harness or special effects. She's sitting on a ladder that's used like a lever, and as actors on this end push down, she goes up. And it's no less magical just because it's accomplished using the sorts of tools you might have in your garage. And I think that is a great note to end this video on. I'm going to hold up again here the 5 plays that I've talked about. Of course, I recommend reading any of these in print form, but if there are local productions in your area, it is even better to see them. If you know of any others that I should totally be familiar with, please let me know. I may not be able to see a production, but I will hopefully be able to read it, and that is at least something. Anyhow, I hope you're all having a nice day. That is all. Bye for now.